Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. A weekly feature on 93.5 FM and live streaming at lakefm.com.
Hello, everyone. This is Bruce Venter. I am a trustee on the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance. Our guest today is Lorna Hainesworth from Randallstown, Maryland. Lorna is a good friend of mine, and she's a good friend of the Alliance, having recently funded a donation to the Indian warrior statue and the refurbishment of that statue. So we're very happy to have Lorna here today. We're not going to talk about the Indian statue, however. We're going to talk about Lorna's recent trip. Some of you may remember a previous podcast where Lorna outlined for us her travel plans to go up through Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, into Canada, Quebec, Montreal, and then back down into New York State as far as Fort Ticonderoga. It was quite a trip, took several weeks, and it was well planned. I know because I followed Lorna's preparations over the last few months, and I've even helped her with a few sources. So, Lorna, you're back safe and sound in the United States. So tell us a little bit about the trip. How did it go?
Well, Bruce, it went extremely well, and I'm happy to say that I didn't have any bad incidences. I had no problems. The vehicle that I drove, which is my 2005 Chevrolet pickup, performed perfectly. There was no problem with that. I managed not to exceed the speed limit, which even on roads or highways that might be like our interstates, the top speed you can go in Canada is 100 kilometers, which is 60 miles an hour. So I was very conscientious about my speed, and I managed not to get into any trouble or have any accidents. So nothing negative happened. It was all positive.
Wonderful.
I started on July 7th, and I was back home again on the 25th of July. I was following the routes of Richard Montgomery and Benedict Arnold on their Canada expeditions. When you think of the route that I took, you can sort of picture in your mind like three sides of a rectangle. I first of all went north, starting out in Cambridge, and I went on up along the coast, and I got to the Kennebec River, and I followed that river up as far as I could go, and then I had to sort of like cross over to get to the Dead River, which is called the Dead River because it has such a slow current. But I got to tell you the truth. When the expedition went through there, there had been a torrential rain. It was not a slow-moving river then, nor was it when I was there, because there had been a lot of rain during the time that I was there. So the Dead River was alive, I guess you could say. From the Dead River, I got to Lake Megantic, and that's the start of the Chaudière River, which flows all the way from Lake Megantic to a city that's just opposite Quebec on the south bank of the St. Lawrence River. And then from Quebec, I went west along the St. Lawrence to Three Rivers and then to Montreal. And then I came south following the Richelieu River, which flows out of Lake Champlain. I ended up at Fort Ticonderoga, which is where Montgomery started. And of course, Cambridge is where Arnold had started. So I had my trip include both of their starting points. Needless to say, the battle that they fought at Quebec, which was in December 31st in 1775 in a blinding snowstorm.
Now, how many days were you on the road?
Well, it amounts to about 19 days, 3 weeks, but I guess it really comes out to like 19 days because I started on a Monday and I got home on a Friday. To tell you the truth, Bruce, I had measured the distance that route that I just described covers, and it's roughly 1,600 miles. However, by the time I got home, with all the side trips that I took and doubling back and this and that and the next thing, I landed up driving almost twice that distance. I drove 3,100 miles total on the trip. And that includes, going from home and then getting back home again. So it was the 3,100. Actually, it's the equivalent of going across the United States.
That's amazing. Now, I have to ask you, Lorna, when you went up through Maine and you followed Arnold's expedition. Did you find the spot where they ate the dog?
No, Bruce, I found.
Don't deny it. He ate a dog. He ate a Newfoundland. I know he did. That's why I don't like Arnold.
Yeah, okay. I know you don't like Arnold, and I'm not asking you to like Arnold. I'm just, I just think that there are things that make him an interesting person to study, and that's pretty much what I'm doing. But at any rate, what I would like to mention, though, is that as I was traveling along, of course, I was following the route of Arnold, up through Maine and into Quebec and that sort of thing, the province of Quebec. And what I found, and this is something I've learned from previous trips, if you see, a wayside that looks like it's got interpretive markers, or you see a little, some sign, whatever, or a place that you think, look, it's like always pays to stop for a few minutes and check it out, because you never know when you're going to find some interpretive signs or monuments or whatever that relate to whatever it is that you're doing. And in this case, they related to Arnold. And I found a number of markers and signs that were not mentioned in any of the research that I had done. So I was really pleased to find these things as I was going along. It's like a treasure hunt. You're driving along, you say, oh, I think I'll stop there. There might be something there. And it's advisable to do that.
Why don't you tell the folks what you did every day for your close friends?
Oh, it's sort of like I'm not traveling by myself, because I have a group of friends that know that I'm taking this trip, and they've received copies of my itinerary before I go. And included in that is where I'm intending to stay each night. And then when I get to where I've intended to stop and I'm checked in, then I send an email to the folks that are in this group. It's my email group, about 20 people. And Bruce, you're one of them.
I know.
And what I do is I give just maybe a very short summary of the highlights of the day with a few pictures and a couple of captions to go with the pictures to say, that what I saw and what I did and where I went and that sort of thing. But in a way, it sort of makes it feel like as if I've got an entourage. I mean, a group of people that are like going with me, and they're, experiencing. And I got to tell you the truth, because I got some tremendously positive feedback from those emails. There were people that said it was the highlight of their day. They said the bright spot. It just really, it's very rewarding to have people enjoy my trip along with me.
Well, I was very happy to see them each day, because then I knew you were okay. Now, tell me, what was the highlight of the tour, and what was the thing you were most disappointed in?
Okay, there are a couple of things I'd like to mention in terms of highlights. First of all, one of them is going to be a natural site, and the other one is going to be a man-made site. First one I'd like to mention is the Chaudière Falls. As you get to the mouth of the river, just before it empties into the St. Lawrence, there is a tremendous, it's like a series of maybe 3 or 4 waterfalls where the Chaudière River drops tremendously to flow into the St. Lawrence. And it is absolutely stunning. The good news is there is a suspension bridge that goes over the river, and you can walk out onto that suspension bridge, and you get a view that is just phenomenal. It's amazing. If anybody gets a chance to go up there, they must stop at Chaudière Falls. The other thing I'd like to mention is that I also stopped, now this is a Montgomery site. This is Fort Chambly. The fort itself is...
Wait a minute, Lorna. We have to tell our listeners that Fort Chambly was captured by none other than John Brown when he was a major. Okay, go ahead.
For those who don't know that Bruce, in as much as Bruce does not like Benedict Arnold, he really likes John Brown. So,
I think our audience knows that.
Okay. But at any rate, there have been something in the neighborhood of 4 different incarnations of the fort there at Chambly, but the one that's there today, it's in excellent shape. It's all stone. There are people there. You can go in and you can get a tour, and it's absolutely worth going there. If anybody gets into that vicinities along the Richelieu River, definitely make Fort Chambly a stop. The other thing that they weren't quite ready yet, there are places that are, like, for example, the Plains of Abraham, they have an exhibit having to do with the attack on Quebec in December of 75. It was a kind of an artsy sort of exhibit, so it wasn't really my thing. But as I understand it, in Montreal, the Chateau Ramsay is going to have a really good exhibit, and they were not going to have it on display until like a week or so after I was there. So I didn't get to see it. But again, I would say if anybody goes to Montreal, do check out the Chateau Ramsay, which happened to be the Continental Army's headquarters up there in Montreal. But check that out. The only thing that was sort of disappointing to me is that I had a couple of days to see Quebec. And the first day I was there, that worked out okay. It was very hot, but I managed to see the various different gates that the city has, and see the Citadel, and see the Plains of Abraham. The next day, after I had seen the lower town, because Quebec is really made up of two separate towns. There's the lower town, just because of the way it's naturally built. And then there's these very high bluffs, and then there's the upper town. Well, at any rate, I went to see the lower town, and then it started to rain. And I mean, I'm telling you, it rained unbelievably. So I'm in the upper town, which you'd think, would drain pretty good because it's up high. Well, no, the streets are flooding. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know my way around here very well. And if they start closing streets, which I'm sure they were getting ready to do, I'll be lost. So I had to stop midday. I lost a half a day of sightseeing because the weather was just so uncooperative. And I mean, but those are the things that happen. You had to sort of roll with the punches.
Okay.
But that was the only bad thing that happened was the weather that day in Quebec.
Now, did you see the site where Montgomery was killed?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And it's my understanding that he was buried in Canada for a brief time. Is that right?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. That's true.
Now, I just found this out today. I was doing some arcane research, not in preparation for this podcast, but I came across the fact that Montgomery had a dog with him on the Canadian campaign, and the dog outlived Montgomery.
Well, that's news to me.
Yeah. Okay. He was a spaniel, and after Montgomery was buried, the spaniel went to the gravesite and tried to dig up the body again. He was so distraught. Yes. And this French family adopted the dog, and they called him Montgomery. And I think that's very interesting. I'm going to have to use that somewhere. I don't know where, but I thought it was nice. And the dog survived the campaign, unlike the Newfoundland.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yes, right. You know what I'm talking about.
One of the things I'd like to mention about Quebec and Montreal for sure, and maybe this is true throughout all of Canada or maybe just in the major cities, I don't really know, but I have a little bit of a mobility problem, and so I have a handicap placard. And in those cities, if you park in a handicap space and you've got a placard, you can park all day for free.
That's good information.
Everything else costs, or it's limited to, like 2 hours, plus you got to feed the meter or do one of these things on your phone, whatever. But if you've got the placard and you can find a handicap space, that's what I did. I mean, I would just park.
I want to say one more thing, Lorna. In your preparation for this tour, you told me that you found a lot of historical personalities that were in the Canadian campaign that we might not know about. Didn't you start making a list of all the famous Americans?
I certainly did. Yes, I certainly did. I had that list. One of the people on that list, I'm glad you brought this up, because one of the people that I want to make sure everybody studies or looks into is a guy named David Worcester. Now, he was from Connecticut.
Yep.
And eventually, after Arnold, after they had the attack in December, and then Arnold got shot in the leg, and he's recuperating. Well, somebody has to be in charge. So at any rate, Worcester he's in charge. at Montreal. And there's all kinds of allegations that he is very cruel to the people, that he refuses to let them do some of the things that they normally would do. And, like he's really a mean guy. Well, the thing is that eventually he requests a court-martial to clear his name. And he, in fact, was declared not to be at fault for anything. But the thing is, when I went through Connecticut on my way up to Cambridge, I was in Connecticut. I got to tell you the truth. David Worcester is a big deal in Connecticut. I mean, there are monuments to him. Yeah. There's even a specific historical marker that indicates that this is where he was shot, because he got killed during the Battle of Ridgefield.
Yeah, the Danbury raid. Yeah, very famous. Yep.
Yeah. But the thing is that he is a very big deal, and the people just think he's just the limit as far as Connecticut is concerned. So I just find him to be a really interesting person. And it was also interesting to me is that, so I'm in Connecticut, and I'm studying all about the Danbury raid, and because I figured I'm in the area, I might as well learn about it. So and the Battle of Ridgefield. Well, Worcester and Arnold were both involved, and they came out as like more or less like heroes from the Battle of Ridgefield. Well, the thing is that the very next day, as I'm traveling north, I go to Fort Griswold, which is right across the Thames River from New London. The thing is that was where Arnold, attacked it's after he'd become a traitor. But it was just, to me personally, it's like I saw him as a hero one day at Ridgefield, and as a villain the next day at Fort Griswold, Groton Heights, New London. And it just sort of struck me that in the space of 24 hours, he flipped on me.
Yeah, he's a traitor. Well, Lorna, we have to wrap it up for today.
I wanted to tell everybody that if they want to learn more about my trip and to see some of the sites that I saw and find out more detail, I'm giving a presentation on this at the Fort Plain Museum's American Revolutionary 250 conference in the latter part of May.
Thanks, Lorna, for this podcast.
Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. For more on this topic, check out the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance podcast. For more information, go to lakegeorgebattlefield.org and tune in every Saturday morning for Lake George Battlefield Moments.